At a busy private airport terminal, the atmosphere buzzed with the usual energy of travelers preparing for their journeys. Among them stood Marcus Thompson, a young and ambitious CEO who had built his tech company from the ground up. Despite his incredible success, Marcus was known for being humble and approachable. He carried himself with quiet confidence, never flaunting his wealth or achievements. On this particular day, he was dressed in a simple yet sharp suit, ready to board a chartered jet for an important business meeting. As Marcus approached the check-in counter, he noticed the manager of the private aviation service eyeing him curiously. The man's name was Gregory Lane, and he had a reputation for being arrogant and dismissive, especially toward people he deemed out of place. To Gregory, Marcus didn't fit the image of someone who could afford such luxurious services. His skin color, youthful appearance, and understated attire only fueled Gregory's assumptions. Without even realizing it, Gregory began forming judgments about Marcus before they exchanged a single word. When Marcus reached the desk, he greeted Gregory, politely handing over his reservation details. "Good morning," Marcus said with a warm smile, his tone calm and professional. But instead of responding with the same courtesy, Gregory glanced at the paperwork and then back at Marcus, his expression laced with skepticism. "Are you sure this is your reservation?" Gregory asked, his voice dripping with condescension. Marcus raised an eyebrow, sensing the subtle insult behind Gregory's words. "Yes, I'm quite sure," Marcus replied evenly, refusing to let Gregory's tone rattle him. But Gregory wasn't done. Leaning slightly forward, he added under his breath, loud enough for Marcus and a nearby staff member to hear, "You know, these jets don't come cheap. Maybe you should double-check your finances before boarding." The comment hung in the air like a dark cloud. Marcus felt the weight of Gregory's mockery but chose not to react immediately. Instead, he took a deep breath, maintaining his composure. He knew that reacting impulsively would only escalate the situation, and he wasn't about to give Gregory the satisfaction of seeing him lose his cool. Still, the sting of Gregory's words lingered. It wasn't the first time Marcus had encountered prejudice, but it always left him wondering how much harder he had to work just to prove himself in spaces where others seemed to have no trouble being accepted. The staff member who overheard Gregory's remark shifted uncomfortably, glancing between Marcus and Gregory. They clearly wanted to say something but hesitated, unsure of how to intervene without making things worse. Meanwhile, other passengers waiting in line began to take notice of the tension brewing at the counter. Some whispered among themselves, while others simply watched, curious to see how the situation would unfold. Gregory, oblivious to the growing audience, continued his tirade. "I mean, look around you," he said, gesturing vaguely at the opulent surroundings of the terminal. "This isn't exactly, well, it's not for everyone." His implication was clear. Marcus didn't belong here. For a brief moment, Marcus considered walking away, letting Gregory's ignorance speak for itself. But something inside him pushed back against that idea. He had worked too hard to allow someone like Gregory to make him feel small. With a steady gaze, Marcus leaned closer to the counter, his voice firm but measured. "Let me clarify something for you," he said, his words cutting through the noise of the terminal. "Not only do I belong here, but I also own the jet I'm about to board, and if you'd like, I can show you proof right now." The room fell silent as all eyes turned to Marcus. Even Gregory seemed momentarily stunned, though he quickly masked his surprise with a smirk. "Oh, really?" Gregory scoffed, clearly doubting Marcus's claim. "If you're so confident, go ahead and prove it." He crossed his arms, leaning back as if daring Marcus to call his bluff. Little did Gregory know Marcus wasn't bluffing, and what happened next would leave everyone in the terminal speechless. For now, the stage was set. Marcus's patience was wearing thin, and Gregory's arrogance was on full display. What neither of them realized was that this encounter would become far more than just a petty disagreement. It would spark a chain of events that neither could have anticipated. As the seconds ticked by, the tension in the air grew thicker, drawing everyone deeper into the unfolding drama. Marcus stood at the counter, his calm demeanor masking the storm brewing inside him. Gregory's smirk lingered on his face, clearly convinced that Marcus was bluffing. The crowd around them had grown larger, with passengers pausing their own plans to witness the unfolding drama. Some whispered among themselves while others simply stared, curious to see how this would play out. The air in the terminal felt heavy, charged with anticipation. Without breaking eye contact, Marcus reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. He opened an app that displayed real-time updates about his private jet, including its flight schedule, maintenance logs, and ownership details. But Marcus wasn't planning to show Gregory just yet. He wanted to make sure the moment landed with maximum impact. Instead, he made a quick call to his assistant, speaking loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear. "Hey, Sarah," Marcus said into the phone, his tone casual but commanding. "Can you send over the confirmation email for my jet? Oh, and while you're at it, include the documentation showing my stake in the aviation company." His words were deliberate, each syllable dripping with confidence. The room fell even quieter as people processed what they were hearing. A few gasps rippled through the crowd, but most remained frozen in place, unsure whether to believe what Marcus was saying. Gregory's smirk faltered slightly, though he tried to cover it up by rolling his eyes. "This is ridiculous," he muttered, under his breath, loud enough for those closest to hear. "He's just trying to save face." But there was a flicker of doubt in his expression now, a crack in the armor of his arrogance. For the first time, Gregory began to question whether he had misjudged Marcus entirely. Within moments, Marcus's phone buzzed with notifications. He glanced down briefly, then turned the screen toward Gregory. On it was an email chain confirming not only Marcus's ownership of the jet, but also his substantial investment in the very aviation company Gregory worked for. Marcus scrolled further, revealing additional documents that left no room for interpretation. To drive the point home, Marcus tapped another button on his phone, connecting it wirelessly to a large digital display mounted on the wall nearby. The screen lit up, projecting the same information for everyone in the terminal to see. Passengers craned their necks to get a better look, and soon murmurs of disbelief filled the room. Names, numbers, and official seals appeared in crisp detail, leaving absolutely no doubt about Marcus's status. The document even included a photo of Marcus standing beside the jet during its christening ceremony, a personal touch that added a layer of authenticity to the presentation. Gregory's face turned pale as he realized the magnitude of his mistake. His earlier smugness evaporated, replaced by sheer panic. He stammered, searching for something, anything to say in his defense. I didn't mean," he began, trailing off when he saw the look in Marcus's eyes. It wasn't anger or triumph, it was disappointment. That single glance cut deeper than any harsh words ever could. Marcus finally broke the silence, addressing not just Gregory but the entire room. "You see," he said, his voice steady and clear, carrying effortlessly across the terminal. "Assumptions like yours aren't just rude, they can have real consequences. You judged me based on how I look, how I dress, and maybe even where I come from. But here's the thing. Success doesn't have a specific image. It doesn't care about your preconceived notions." His words struck a nerve, resonating with many of the onlookers. Some nodded in agreement while others exchanged guilty glances, perhaps recalling times when they too had made similar judgments. Marcus wasn't lecturing. He was sharing a truth he had learned through years of navigating spaces where he often felt underestimated. His message was simple yet powerful. Respect should be the default, not something earned after jumping through hoops. Gregory, still reeling from the public exposure of his error, attempted to salvage the situation. "Look, Mr. Thompson," he started, fumbling over his words. "I apologize if I came off the wrong way. I assure you, it won't happen again." But his apology sounded hollow, forced rather than genuine. Marcus studied him for a moment, weighing whether to let it slide or press further. "I appreciate the apology," Marcus replied, his tone softening slightly. "But actions speak louder than words. Let this be a lesson for both of us." With that, he stepped back from the counter, signaling that the confrontation was over. There was no need to drag it out further. Marcus had made his point, and Gregory had been humbled in front of an audience that wouldn't soon forget what they'd witnessed. As Marcus walked toward the boarding area, several passengers approached him to express their admiration. One older man shook his hand firmly, saying, "That took guts, son. You handled that beautifully." A young woman thanked him for standing up against prejudice, admitting that she often felt overlooked herself because of her gender. Others simply offered nods of respect, acknowledging the quiet strength Marcus had displayed. Meanwhile, Gregory retreated behind the counter, visibly shaken. He avoided making eye contact with anyone, his usual bravado completely stripped away. The staff member who had overheard his earlier comment gave him a pointed look, silently reminding him of the damage caused by his behavior. For the rest of the day, Gregory struggled to focus on his duties, haunted by the memory of Marcus's composed demeanor and the crowd's collective judgment. What happened next would ripple far beyond the confines of the airport terminal. News of the incident spread quickly, thanks to social media posts from eyewitnesses who shared snippets of the encounter online. Hashtags like Jacques Respect and Humility began trending, sparking conversations about bias and accountability in professional settings. Marcus became an accidental symbol of resilience, proving that dignity and grace could silence even the harshest critics. For Gregory, however, the ordeal was far from over. The weight of his actions and the public humiliation that followed forced him to confront uncomfortable truths about himself. Would he learn from this experience, or would he continue down the same path? Only time would tell. But one thing was certain. Marcus Thompson had turned a moment of disrespect into an opportunity for growth, not just for himself, but for everyone who bore witness to it. The humbling moment for Gregory Lane didn't end with Marcus walking away. As the crowd dispersed and passengers resumed their journeys, Gregory found himself rooted to the spot, his mind racing. The weight of what had just happened pressed down on him like a physical force. He replayed every word, every glance, every detail in his head, unable to shake the feeling of shame that now clung to him. For years, he had prided himself on being in control, on knowing exactly how to handle people and situations. But today, he had been completely blindsided, and it was all his own doing. Gregory's co-workers noticed his unease immediately. They exchanged wary glances as he fumbled through routine tasks, his usual confidence replaced by a palpable sense of discomfort. One of the ground staff approached him cautiously, offering a supportive smile. "You okay, Greg?" she asked gently. Gregory hesitated, unsure of how to respond. Part of him wanted to brush it off, to pretend nothing had happened. But another part, a deeper, more honest part, knew that wasn't an option. He nodded slowly, muttering something about needing a break before retreating to his office. Once inside, Gregory closed the door behind him and sank into his chair. His phone buzzed incessantly with notifications from colleagues tagging him in social media posts about the incident. Passengers who had witnessed the confrontation had wasted no time sharing videos and commentary online. Some praised Marcus for his calm and composed response, while others criticized Gregory for his arrogance and misplaced assumptions. Comments ranged from empathetic calls for self-reflection to harsh judgments that left Gregory cringing with each scroll. It was clear this wasn't going to blow over anytime soon. As the hours passed, Gregory's initial shock gave way to a flood of emotions: guilt, embarrassment, frustration, and even anger at himself. He couldn't believe how quickly things had spiraled out of control. What started as a careless comment had turned into a public spectacle, one that exposed not only his biases but also his lack of professionalism. He replayed Marcus's words in his mind. Success doesn't have a specific image. Those simple yet profound words echoed in his thoughts, forcing him to confront uncomfortable truths about his own behavior. Eventually, Gregory realized he couldn't stay locked away forever. He needed to face the consequences of his actions, and more importantly, he needed to make amends. Taking a deep breath, he opened his laptop and began drafting an email. It wasn't easy. Every sentence felt inadequate compared to the gravity of the situation. After several attempts, he finally settled on a message that conveyed genuine remorse. Subject: My sincere apology, dear Mr. Thompson. I hope this message finds you well. I'm writing to express my deepest apologies for my behavior earlier today. My comments were disrespectful and unfounded, and I deeply regret allowing my assumptions to cloud my judgment. You handled the situation with remarkable grace and dignity, which only highlighted how far I fell short of professional conduct. Please know that I take full responsibility for my actions, and I am committed to learning from this experience. If you're open to it, I would appreciate the opportunity to discuss this further and understand how I can grow from it. Thank you for your understanding, and I sincerely hope we can move forward positively. Sincerely, Gregory Lane. After hitting send, Gregory sat back in his chair, exhaling sharply. He knew the ball was now in Marcus's court. Would the CEO even bother responding? Given everything that had transpired, Gregory wouldn't blame him if he ignored the email altogether. Still, sending it gave him a small sense of relief. It was a step toward accountability, however imperfect. To Gregory's surprise, Marcus replied within the hour. His response was brief but thoughtful. Subject: My sincere apology. Mr. Lane, thank you for reaching out. I appreciate your willingness to acknowledge what happened and seek growth. While words alone cannot undo the impact of such moments, they are a starting point. I'd be happy to meet for a conversation when our schedules align. Let's use this as an opportunity to foster understanding. Best regards, Marcus Thompson. Reading Marcus's reply, Gregory felt a mix of emotions: gratitude, humility, and a renewed determination to change. He hadn't expected such a measured and compassionate response, especially after the way he had treated Marcus. It was a stark reminder of the kind of leader Marcus was, and the kind of person Gregory aspired to become. A few days later, the two men met at a quiet cafe near the airport. Gregory arrived early, nervously fidgeting with his coffee cup as he waited. When Marcus walked in, Gregory stood up immediately, extending his hand. "Thank you for meeting me," he said earnestly. Marcus shook his hand firmly, nodding. Of course. I believe in second chances." Over the next hour, they talked openly about the incident and its broader implications. Marcus shared stories from his own life, recounting moments when he had faced prejudice and doubt because of his race or age. He explained how those experiences had shaped him, not with bitterness but with resilience and a desire to pave the way for others. Gregory listened intently, occasionally interjecting with questions or reflections. By the end of the conversation, he felt a profound shift in his perspective. One story in particular stuck with Gregory. Marcus described a time early in his career when he had pitched an idea to potential investors. Despite having a solid plan and undeniable expertise, he was dismissed outright because of stereotypes about his background. Instead of giving up, Marcus returned weeks later with even stronger data and a polished presentation. This time, he secured the funding he needed. "That experience taught me something valuable," Marcus said. "People will always have opinions about you, but you get to decide how much power you give them." Gregory nodded, absorbing the lesson. "I see now how harmful my assumptions were," he admitted. "Not just to you, but to everyone I've interacted with. I never stopped to consider how my words might affect someone else." Marcus smiled, softly. "Awareness is the first step. Now it's about action, choosing to treat everyone with respect, regardless of appearances." By the time they parted ways, Gregory felt a renewed sense of purpose. He vowed to implement changes in his workplace, starting with mandatory training sessions on unconscious bias and inclusivity. He also reached out to colleagues who had witnessed the incident, thanking them for holding him accountable and encouraging open dialogue about improving company culture. Slowly but surely, Gregory began rebuilding trust, not just with Marcus, but with everyone around him. For Marcus, the encounter reinforced his belief in the power of grace under pressure. He knew that not every situation would end so constructively, but this one served as a reminder that even in moments of conflict, there is always room for growth and understanding. And for Gregory, it marked the beginning of a journey toward becoming a better version of himself. one that prioritized empathy, humility, and respect above all else. The days following Gregory's meeting with Marcus marked a turning point, not just for him, but for the entire aviation company he managed. Inspired by his conversation with Marcus, Gregory threw himself into making meaningful changes. He started small, reflecting on his own behavior and identifying areas where he could improve. But soon his efforts expanded beyond personal growth. He began implementing initiatives aimed at fostering a more inclusive and respectful environment within the workplace. Gregory's first step was organizing a series of workshops focused on unconscious bias and diversity training. These sessions weren't mandatory just for frontline staff. They were open to everyone in the company, including senior management. At first, some employees were skeptical, murmuring that this was likely an empty gesture meant to save face after the incident with Marcus. But Gregory worked hard to prove them wrong. He personally attended every session, sitting alongside his team members and actively participating in discussions. His presence sent a clear message. This wasn't about checking boxes or avoiding bad press. It was about creating real, lasting change. During one of these workshops, Gregory shared his experience with Marcus openly, acknowledging his mistakes without sugarcoating them. "I let my assumptions get the better of me," he admitted to the group, "and because of that I hurt someone who deserved nothing but respect. That's not the kind of leader or person I want to be." His honesty resonated with many in the room, sparking candid conversations about their own biases and blind spots. Employees began sharing stories of times they had felt judged or excluded, creating a space where vulnerability was encouraged rather than shamed. Word of Gregory's transformation spread quickly throughout the company. Colleagues who had once dismissed him as arrogant now saw glimpses of humility and sincerity. One of his closest co-workers, a woman named Clara, approached him after one of the sessions. "You've really changed," she said with a smile. "It takes guts to admit when you're wrong, especially publicly. I think people are starting to see that." Encouraged by the positive feedback, Gregory decided to take things a step further. He collaborated with HR to launch a mentorship program designed to support employees from underrepresented backgrounds. The goal was simple: provide guidance, resources, and opportunities for growth to those who might otherwise struggle to find their footing in the industry. Gregory even volunteered to serve as a mentor himself, pairing up with a young employee named Jamal, who reminded him of Marcus in many ways: ambitious, driven, and often underestimated. Jamal initially hesitated to trust Gregory given his reputation. But over time he came to appreciate Gregory's genuine interest in helping him succeed. Together, they worked on projects, discussed career goals, and navigated challenges. Through these interactions, Gregory gained valuable insights into the barriers faced by individuals like Jamal and how systemic issues within the company contributed to those struggles. This newfound awareness fueled his determination to keep pushing for progress. Meanwhile, Marcus continued to make waves in both the tech world and beyond. The incident at the airport had gone viral, sparking widespread conversations about prejudice and representation in professional spaces. People admired not only Marcus's composure during the confrontation, but also his willingness to extend grace to Gregory. In interviews and public appearances, Marcus used his platform to advocate for greater inclusivity, urging companies to move beyond performative gestures and commit to tangible action. One evening, Marcus received an invitation to speak at a major industry conference. The theme of the event was breaking barriers, and organizers hoped he would share his story to inspire others. Marcus accepted, seeing it as an opportunity to amplify the message he had been championing for years. On the day of the conference, the auditorium was packed with attendees eager to hear what he had to say. Standing on stage, Marcus began by recounting the events at the airport. He described the initial sting of Gregory's remarks, the decision to respond with dignity, and the unexpected outcome of their subsequent meeting. "What happened that day wasn't just about me or Gregory," Marcus explained. "It was a reminder of how powerful our choices can be. We can choose to perpetuate cycles of bias and division, or we can choose to break them." He went on to highlight examples of individuals and organizations that were leading the charge for equity and inclusion. From startups prioritizing diverse, hiring practices to established corporations rethinking their leadership structures, Marcus painted a picture of hope and possibility. Change doesn't happen overnight, he emphasized, but every step counts, every effort matters, and every voice has the potential to spark transformation. As Marcus wrapped up his speech, the audience erupted into applause. Many attendees lingered afterward, lining up to thank him for his words. Some shared their own stories of overcoming adversity, while others sought advice on how to drive change within their own workplaces. Marcus listened intently to each person, offering encouragement and practical suggestions. By the end of the night, he felt a deep sense of fulfillment, a reminder of why he had chosen to use his success as a force for good. Back at the aviation company, Gregory watched a recording of Marcus's speech. Hearing Marcus speak so passionately reignited his commitment to the work he had started. He realized that while he couldn't undo the past, he could continue striving to create a future where no one else would have to endure what Marcus had experienced. With renewed energy, Gregory proposed a partnership between his company and Marcus's tech firm, aiming to develop tools that would promote accessibility and fairness in private aviation services. To his delight, Marcus agreed to explore the TRDR idea. Over the next few months, the two men collaborated closely, combining their expertise to tackle shared challenges. Their partnership became a symbol of what was possible when people chose understanding over judgment, cooperation over conflict. For Gregory, working alongside Marcus reinforced the lessons he had learned, that true leadership wasn't about wielding power, but about empowering others. And for Marcus, it was proof that even those who made mistakes could grow and contribute to something greater than themselves. By the end of the year, the aviation company had undergone significant cultural shifts. Employee satisfaction surveys showed marked improvements, and feedback from clients praised the newfound warmth and professionalism of the staff. Gregory's efforts hadn't gone unnoticed. He was recognized internally for his dedication to fostering inclusivity, earning the respect of colleagues and superiors alike. Looking back on everything that had transpired, Gregory felt a profound sense of gratitude, not just for the second chance Marcus had given him, but for the journey it had set him on. He knew there was still much work to be done, but he embraced the challenge with optimism and resolve. As for Marcus, he viewed the entire experience as a testament to the power of resilience and compassion. Together, they had turned a moment of tension into an opportunity for growth, not just for themselves but for countless others whose lives they touched along the way. Months had passed since the incident at the airport, and both Marcus Thompson and Gregory Lane found themselves reflecting on how much their lives, and the world around them, had changed. What began as a tense confrontation had evolved into something neither of them could have predicted, a partnership rooted in mutual respect and a shared vision for progress. For Gregory, the transformation was profound. He no longer saw himself as simply the manager of a private aviation service. Instead, he viewed his role through a broader lens, one that emphasized empathy, accountability, and leadership. The workshops, mentorship programs, and cultural initiatives he spearheaded within the company weren't just about damage control. They became pillars of a new foundation upon which the organization stood. Employees who once felt invisible or dismissed now felt valued and empowered. Client feedback reflected this shift too, with many praising the warmth and professionalism of the staff. But perhaps the most significant change occurred within Gregory himself. His conversations with Marcus during their coffee meeting lingered in his mind long after they parted ways. Marcus's words about resilience, grace, and breaking barriers resonated deeply, inspiring Gregory to approach every challenge with a renewed mindset. He began journaling regularly, documenting his thoughts, and tracking his growth. It wasn't always easy. He still caught himself slipping into old habits occasionally. But he remained committed to learning from those moments rather than letting them define him. One evening, while reviewing employee testimonials from the diversity training sessions, Gregory came across one that particularly struck him. A young woman named Priya wrote about how the program had helped her overcome imposter syndrome. "I used to think I didn't belong here," she confessed in her note. "But hearing stories like Mr. Lane's made me realize we all make mistakes, and that doesn't mean we're stuck in them. Seeing him take responsibility gave me hope that I can grow and succeed too." Reading those words filled Gregory with a mix of pride and humility. He realized that his actions, or lack thereof, carried weight far beyond what he'd ever imagined. Meanwhile, Marcus continued to thrive in his own endeavors. His collaboration with Gregory's aviation company had blossomed into a full-fledged partnership aimed at revolutionizing accessibility in private travel. Together, they developed innovative tools designed to streamline booking processes, enhance customer experiences, and ensure inclusivity for clients from diverse backgrounds. For example, they introduced customizable interfaces for passengers with disabilities and implemented AI-driven systems to eliminate bias in client interactions. These innovations not only improved operations but also set a new standard for the industry. Beyond the business side, Marcus remained steadfast in his advocacy work. The ripple effects of the airport incident continued to spread, sparking global conversations about prejudice and representation. Social media hashtags like Respect in Action gained traction, encouraging people to share stories of overcoming bias and fostering understanding. Influencers, activists, and thought leaders joined the movement, amplifying its reach. Marcus often participated in panel discussions and podcasts, using these platforms to highlight the importance of systemic change over superficial fixes. Yet, despite his growing influence, Marcus stayed grounded. He credited his success not to his achievements alone, but to the lessons he'd learned along the way. "Every setback is an opportunity to grow," he would say during interviews. "And every person you meet has the potential to teach you something valuable, if you're willing to listen." As the months rolled on, Gregory and Marcus maintained a close working relationship. Their weekly strategy meetings often turned into informal chats about life, leadership, and the challenges of driving meaningful change. One afternoon, as they sat in a conference room overlooking the tarmac, Gregory posed a question that had been weighing on him. "Do you think people will ever truly stop judging others based on appearances?" he asked, his tone tinged with uncertainty. Marcus leaned back in his chair, considering the question carefully before responding. "Probably not entirely," he admitted. "Bias is deeply ingrained. It's part of human nature. But that doesn't mean we can't fight against it. Every time someone chooses to look past assumptions and see the person behind them, it chips away at those barriers. Change starts small, but it compounds over time." Gregory nodded thoughtfully. "I guess that's why what we're doing matters so much," he said. "It's not just about fixing one company or one industry. It's about setting an example that others can follow." Their conversation underscored a truth they both believed in. Real change required patience, persistence, and collective effort. Neither man claimed to have all the answers, but together, they were making strides toward a better future. The impact of their partnership extended beyond the walls of the aviation company. Other businesses in the industry took notice of their efforts, prompting some to adopt similar practices. Competitors who once dismissed such initiatives as unnecessary began realizing their value, not just ethically, but financially as well. Clients increasingly prioritized companies that demonstrated a commitment to inclusivity, proving that doing the right thing could also be good for business. Even outside the professional sphere, the ripple effects of Marcus and Gregory's journey reached unexpected corners. Friends, family members, and acquaintances of both men started engaging in conversations about bias and privilege. Some even initiated their own projects aimed at promoting equity and understanding. It was as if the spark ignited by a single moment of confrontation had grown into a wildfire of positive change. One day, Gregory received a letter from a former colleague who had left the aviation company years earlier due to dissatisfaction with its culture. In the letter, the colleague expressed gratitude for the changes Gregory had implemented, acknowledging that they had restored his faith in the organization. "You've shown me that people can change," the letter read, "and that gives me hope for the future." Touched by the sentiment, Gregory framed the letter and placed it on his desk, a constant reminder of why his work mattered. Similarly, Marcus kept a folder on his computer filled with messages from individuals inspired by his story. Whenever doubt crept in, he revisited those notes, drawing strength from the knowledge that his efforts were making a difference. By the end of the year, Gregory and Marcus stood side by side at an award ceremony honoring companies leading the charge for diversity and inclusion. Their aviation company received recognition for its groundbreaking initiatives, and Marcus delivered a heartfelt speech accepting the award. "This isn't just our victory," he said, gesturing to Gregory and the rest of the team. "It belongs to everyone who dared to challenge the status quo and believe in the possibility of change." As the crowd erupted into applause, Gregory couldn't help but feel a swell of emotion. The journey hadn't been easy, but it had been worth every step. He glanced at Marcus, who smiled warmly in return and knew they had accomplished something extraordinary. They had taken a moment of conflict and turned it into a catalyst for growth, a testament to the power of humility, forgiveness, and collaboration. Looking ahead, neither man planned to slow down. There was still so much work to be done, so many barriers to break. But as they walked out of the ceremony together, surrounded by colleagues and friends, they felt confident in one thing. They were building a legacy that would inspire generations to come. And in that moment, nothing else mattered. The legacy of Marcus Thompson and Gregory Lane's unlikely partnership continued to grow, rippling outward in ways that neither man could have fully anticipated. What had started as a single moment of conflict at an airport terminal had evolved into a movement that transcended industries, communities, and even borders. Their story became a beacon of hope, a reminder that growth, understanding, and change were always possible, no matter how entrenched the challenges seemed. For Gregory, the journey wasn't without its struggles. There were days when he questioned whether his efforts were making enough of a difference. Despite the progress within his company, he occasionally faced resistance from colleagues who viewed diversity initiatives as unnecessary or disruptive. Some clients pushed back against new policies, claiming they complicated processes that had worked just fine for years. Yet Gregory refused to let these obstacles deter him. He reminded himself of the lessons he'd learned from Marcus. Resilience was key, and every step forward, even if small, was worth celebrating. One of the most transformative moments came when Gregory attended a global conference on workplace inclusivity. The event brought together leaders from various industries, all united by a shared goal of creating equitable environments. During a panel discussion, Gregory shared his story openly, detailing the incident with Marcus and the steps he had taken to turn it into an opportunity for growth. His honesty struck a chord with the audience, many of whom approached him afterward to express their admiration. "I never thought I'd hear someone admit to being wrong so publicly," one attendee told him. "But seeing how far you've come gives me courage to face my own biases." These words stayed with Gregory long after the conference ended, reinforcing his belief that vulnerability could inspire others to do the same. Meanwhile, Marcus remained a driving force for innovation and advocacy. His tech company flourished, earning accolades not only for its cutting-edge products, but also for its commitment to social responsibility. Employees spoke proudly of the inclusive culture Marcus had cultivated, a culture where everyone felt seen, heard, and valued. Under his leadership, the company launched several community outreach programs aimed at supporting underrepresented groups in STEM fields. From scholarships for young women pursuing engineering degrees to internships designed to provide hands-on experience for marginalized youth, Marcus ensured that his success benefited those who needed opportunities most. The collaboration between Marcus's tech firm and Gregory's aviation company reached new heights as well. Together, they unveiled a groundbreaking initiative called Access Sky, a platform designed to make private air travel more accessible to underserved populations. Through partnerships with nonprofits and government agencies, Access Sky offered discounted flights for medical emergencies, educational trips, and humanitarian missions. The program received widespread acclaim, earning features in major publications and sparking interest from other companies eager to replicate its model. But perhaps the most remarkable aspect of Access Sky was the stories it generated. Families, separated by distance due to financial constraints, were reunited. Students unable to afford travel to prestigious universities gained access to life-changing opportunities. Medical patients in remote areas received critical care thanks to expedited transport. Each success story added another layer to the narrative of what was possible when people chose compassion over convenience. As the years went by, Marcus and Gregory's friendship deepened. They weren't just professional collaborators anymore. They were confidants, mentors, and allies. Their weekly meetings became less about strategy and more about sharing insights, challenges, and triumphs. One afternoon, as they sat in Marcus's office overlooking the city skyline, Gregory posed a question that had been on his mind for some time. "Do you ever worry about burnout?" he asked. "About taking on too much and losing sight of why we started?" Marcus smiled thoughtfully before answering. "All the time," he admitted. "But I remind myself that this isn't about perfection. It's about progress. If we focus on doing one thing better each day, eventually, it adds up." He paused, then added, "Besides, we're not alone in this. Look at everything we've built together. That's proof that collective effort can move mountains." Gregory nodded, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. Their conversation underscored a truth they both believed in. Meaningful change required teamwork, patience, and perseverance. It wasn't about achieving perfection overnight. It was about planting seeds and nurturing them until they grew into something sustainable. The ripple effects of their work extended far beyond their immediate circles. Other companies began adopting similar practices, inspired by the success of Marcus and Gregory's initiatives. Competitors who once dismissed inclusivity as a trend now recognized it as a necessity, not just morally, but economically. Clients increasingly prioritized businesses that aligned with their values, proving that ethical practices could coexist with profitability. Even outside the professional realm, their impact resonated deeply. Friends, family members, and acquaintances of both men found themselves engaging in conversations about bias, privilege, and allyship. Some started grassroots movements in their communities, while others implemented changes in their workplaces. It was as if the spark ignited by Marcus and Gregory's confrontation had grown into a wildfire of positive transformation. One particularly poignant example came from a former employee of Gregory's aviation company. After leaving the organization, years earlier, she had struggled to find employment due to systemic barriers. However, through the mentorship program Gregory had established, she returned to the industry, eventually rising to a leadership position. In a heartfelt letter to Gregory, she wrote, "You didn't just give me a job, you gave me a future, and because of that, I'm determined to pay it forward." Similarly, Marcus received countless messages from individuals inspired by his journey. Many credited him with helping them navigate their own battles against prejudice and self-doubt. "Your story taught me that my voice matters," one young entrepreneur wrote. "Thank you for showing me that I belong here no matter what anyone else says." As the years passed, Marcus and Gregory continued to push boundaries, challenge norms, and advocate for a better world. They knew there would always be setbacks, moments when progress felt slow or impossible, but they faced them with unwavering determination. Together, they proved that even the most contentious beginnings could lead to extraordinary outcomes. Eventually, their story became the subject of books, documentaries, and lectures. Universities invited them to speak to students about leadership, resilience, and the power of forgiveness. Corporations sought their advice on implementing inclusive practices, and yet, despite the recognition, neither man lost sight of what truly mattered: the people whose lives they touched along the way. On the 10th anniversary of the incident at the airport, Marcus and Gregory stood side by side once again. This time at a charity gala celebrating a decade of progress in diversity and inclusion. As they addressed the crowd, their bond was evident in every word they spoke. "We didn't set out to change the world," Marcus said, his voice steady and sincere. We simply wanted to do the right thing, and in doing so, we discovered that the smallest acts of kindness and humility can create waves of change. Gregory took the microphone next, his tone reflective yet hopeful. This journey has taught me that none of us are defined by our mistakes. We're defined by how we choose to grow from them. So, to anyone listening tonight, I say this: don't be afraid to confront your biases, to apologize when you're wrong, and to believe in the possibility of a better tomorrow. As the audience erupted into applause, Marcus and Gregory exchanged a glance, a silent acknowledgement of how far they'd come. They knew their work wasn't finished, but they also knew they weren't alone. Together, they had sparked a movement that would continue long after they were gone, a testament to the enduring power of empathy, collaboration, and faith in humanity. And as they walked off stage, arm in arm, they carried with them the knowledge that their story wasn't just theirs. It belonged to everyone who dared to dream of a brighter, more inclusive future.